समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
आप समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Why is Donald Trump really targeting India? Why is he penalizing India for the purchase of Russian oil and not penalizing China, which buys much more oil? Is this something personal? Is this a problem between Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi? Is this about Operation Sindoor? Is there a global realignment taking place? Many questions and few answers. In a moment from now, we'll be talking to former MEA advisor and partner at the Asia Group, Ashok Mittal, whose column trying to address exactly this million-dollar question in the Financial Times is now viral. I'm Barkha. You're with the Mojo Story. On the program today, we try and look at the world after it's been upended by Donald Trump and his rather bizarre tariff war with India. What has made Trump single out India in the way that he has? If this is really about the purchase of Russian oil, why is Trump not penalizing China in the same way that buys much more oil? Is this about trade or is this about India refusing to flatter Trump? What explains Trump's new coziness with Pakistan? And how do we look at the new short-term alignments that seem to be forming around Trump's tariff war? The Chinese foreign minister in India, albeit headed next to Pakistan, and India's foreign minister in Moscow. Is in India, China, Russia axis now a real thing? A move by these three countries where at least two are adversarial to try and contain the damage that Trump is bringing on the world as we have understood it or known it thus far. We try and tackle these questions now with our newsmaker on the program today. Let me welcome to the program Ashok Mittal. Ashok Mittal is a partner at the Asia Group and has been an advisor with the Foreign Ministry, the Ministry of External Affairs. Thank you, Ashok. It's good to see you. Let me actually get straight to your Financial Times column. The central argument that you make in the FT is that this is really about India holding out on the trade negotiations. And the reason that Trump is getting so apoplectic is because those trade negotiations have not yet concluded. The column, for anyone who hasn't read it, do please read it. It's on the screen at this moment. The column seems to make the argument that this is all about trade, not about all of the other sort of associated theories that several people have brought to this crisis. What's actually going on here, according to you?
Look, obviously, like everybody else, I'm guessing. But since much of my work focuses on the economy at the Asia Group, I have tried to look at it through the economic lens. One, let's look at it through India's trade with Russia. India's trade with Russia, to be honest with you, before 2020 was very small. Its non-oil trade remains very, very small, practically non-existent. It switched to buying Russian oil because there was a run on its own oil markets, its own oil suppliers in the Middle East or the Gulf, straight after the Ukraine war, when the Europeans started pivoting from their suppliers in Russia to other suppliers. And since it's not like the world was getting new energy from Mars or from Venus. There was the same energy going around, which everyone was trying to buy. Every country was scrambling for energy. And Indian refining companies found Russian oil available on the high seas, and that began a process of purchasing oil. This happened in conjunction and collaboration with the US administration at that point and with the understanding of Western governments, because this oil got refined in India and sent back into global markets to keep energy prices manageable across the world. We are not the only country which had this problem. Let me name a country which Indians don't normally name: Pakistan. Pakistan, at that point in 2020 or thereabouts, the Pakistani government issued 3 global tenders for long-term gas supply contracts. 3, they were willing to pay dollars for that. None of those tenders got even a single response. Why? Because countries like Germany had skewed the spot market for gas by pouring dollars and euros into it. And I can understand the German government wanted energy for its people, just as the Indian government wanted for its people, or for that matter, the Pakistani government for its people. Now, with Russia, every country, not every country, but many countries have made compromises. The US imports fertilizers, imports uranium and palladium. The EU and European countries continue to import without restrictions gas. They also buy oil refined in countries like India. China buys lots of oil and sells lots of stuff. The Europeans sell a lot of stuff to Russia through Central Asia, through countries like Kazakhstan and the countries of the Caucasus. Essentially, trade with Russia is continuing. Turkey also trades with Russia. The numbers may have fallen since 2020, but trade continues in one form or the other. Why then is India being singled out and being told that you are financing the war, which is patently not true, because there's so much else and so many other ways in which Russia's economy is benefiting, either making money or saving money. This leads me to my second conclusion, that obviously the anger or the frustration or the irritation or the pressure point relates to something connected to the economy, and it's probably the trade deal. The trade deal has been under negotiation for about 6 months now, since February. My understanding is the Indian side has come up with a very generous offer by Indian standards. It offers market access to a greater variety of American imports and deeper tariff cuts than hitherto has ever happened in India's history. And it offers a near permanent market access and tariff advantage to American exporters selling to India. Obviously, Mr. Trump wants more. In certain areas such as dairy or wheat or GM food, that is not possible. We have our restrictions, and just as the US has restrictions as well. I understand selling tobacco to the US is impossible because there's a 350% tariff. That's what I've been told. I'm not 100% sure. But the offer India's made is a good offer. Of course, it can be negotiated further. It's been sitting in the White House after Indian and US trade negotiators sent it there, or the US trade negotiators sent it there some weeks ago. It has not been responded to. It has not been rejected. It has not been accepted either. It's just sitting there. And one would imagine the Trump administration is resorting to strong arm tactics and pressure to get India to bend on areas where India does not want to bend. That is my confusion.
Yeah. But does it convince you that this is the whole story? Because look at some of the public statements. For example, the US Treasury Secretary now basically targeting India's billionaires and saying India's richest people or industrialists are profiteering from this trade. Pete Navarro, an advisor to Trump, writing an op-ed basically talking about India as if it were a oil client, for example, right? And talking about oil lobbies. So this kind of aggression seems to have been reserved for India, as opposed to, for example, the Chinese, who buy much more Russian oil.
Two things here. One, with India, some of the language that has been used by President Trump, calling India a dead economy, a loose throwaway line, but it had a deep impact here.
Yeah.
Or Peter Navarro's column or article in Financial Times, Secretary of the Treasury Bessent's comments, the White House spokesperson saying we've imposed sanctions on India, very strong word.
Yeah.
Now, all of these might be intended in the US as throwaway lines which you'll use to place pressure and then forget about it and move on. That might be the thinking. I don't know where it is, but it might be.
Yeah.
But what it has been interpreted here in India, not just by the government or by politicians or by public officials, but by the public at large, is a deep insensitivity to some of India's core concerns, even some of its security concerns.
Yeah.
And once public opinion gets hardened it becomes more difficult for the government, for any government, to make further compromises or offer for further concessions. And that is why I believe that the longer term impact of this episode, the past few weeks, and the loose comments that have been offered, and acerbic comments that have been offered, will be with us for some time to come.
So, in your column, you say strategic partnerships cannot be built on spurious arguments. What is the most spurious argument you've heard from Washington in the last few weeks?
Well, that India is funding Putin's war. I mean, Germany and Italy are continuing to buy gas, all of Europe is continuing to buy gas from Putin. Germany and Italy are exporting almost as usual to Putin and to Russia through third countries. This has been recorded by Western institutions and research organizations, not by me. Turkey, which is a NATO partner and a close ally of President Putin and of the US, is continuing to doing business with Russia, including energy purchase. The Chinese, with whom the Americans seem to be doing a deal of some nature or the other, are not just importing from Russia, but also exporting to Russia. So if all of this is happening, why is India being singled out as supposedly financing the war? America itself is buying precious elements such as commodities such as palladium and uranium and, of course, fertilizers. All of this is justified as necessary for that country's economy. Fair enough. But we can also have India making purchases that are necessary for its economy.
So let me read out some figures that you quote in your article. You say the EU exports to Russia are valued at 34 billion pounds annually, China 150 billion pounds, and India is under 5 billion pounds annually, and that's actually the contrast. This is just exports. My question to you then is, is Russian oil or the entire noise around it a bogey?
I would think it is a bogey. If you look at even EU exports to Russia, which I think are listed at 34 billion, this is certainly a fall from what it was in 2020. No question. It's a steep fall. But if you look at the transshipment of EU of goods or exports to Russia through third countries, through Central Asian countries, through countries in the Caucasus region, then the numbers go up steeply. So are the Europeans making as much of a sacrifice as they say they are? They are making a sacrifice, but is it as steep and as large as they claim? And why is India suddenly the bad guy? Because after all, the Russian oil being refined in India by excellent Indian refineries is being sold to European countries as well. They're using that oil. So, well, they can stop buying that oil if they so desire, but they need it for their own purposes, just as we need oil for our purposes.
You just said that there's been a kind of insensitivity to India's core concerns, including security concerns. Now, one of the things that has been a bit baffling is Trump's newfound love for Pakistan. We've seen Asim Munir make 2 trips in 2 months. His comments at a private charity dinner in Tampa are reported to have included a nuclear threat. There are comments that attribute a threat to Mukesh Ambani. And then if you juxtapose that with the Treasury Secretary targeting India's wealthy industrialists for profiteering, you begin to see some dots joining there. How do we read this? I mean, and then of course there's talk of business dealings between, cryptocurrency trade linked to Trump's family and Pakistan's cryptocurrency council. What's actually going on here?
Look, let's take a slightly wider view. Pakistan is an obsession for many of us in India, but we need to recognize quite correctly that while many countries have concerns about terrorism and certainly are sympathetic to India's predicament when it faces terrorism from sources based in Pakistan, beyond a certain point, Pakistan and Pakistani terrorism are our problem, not the world's problem. They're not Colombia's problem or Venezuela's problem. Those countries will offer us sympathy, but then they will do business with Pakistan to the degree they need to. So even America cannot entirely ignore Pakistan. That is accepted. However, insensitivity to the entire issue of terrorism, allowing Munir on American soil to make remarks that are even mildly put incendiary,
Yeah.
without any objection. And a few weeks after a conflict between India and Pakistan, a few weeks after a terrorist incident such as the one in Pahalgam, for the president of the US to say, oh, someday India can buy oil from Pakistan, very loosely. These are ill-thought statements. And as I said, they might not be intended as anything more than immediate pressure or throwaway line, but the impact they have on Indian public opinion is far greater than perhaps those who make them realize.
But why?
And
I mean, if what's happening is because of trade in India, Pakistan's flattered Trump. It's spoken about how he deserves a Nobel Prize. Is this about flattery? First, we thought it was about Iran. Then we thought it was about cryptocurrency. Now we think it's about something else. So why?
look, I don't want to get into flattery or cryptocurrency. All of those are concerns we've all heard about. We've all heard, but frankly, governments deal with each other on the basis of many different factors. Sometimes it's flattery or personality. Often it's the merits and substance of the deal. So there is an India-US trade proposal sitting at the White House. I certainly don't believe it's being assessed on merits. Because on merits, whoever looks at it would say, look, there are advantages for the US here. Let's push a little more at the negotiation table if we can, but let's take this. This is tranche 1A, there will be tranche 1B, and then there will be tranche 2. But let's start. Let's be constructive. The Indian side is not getting that sentiment. I cannot understand why. Beyond the point.
There are Indian journalists based out of Washington who make the argument that India's message that Trump runs a top-down administration, and therefore you've got to reach Trump. There's no point reaching people in the administration. You've got to reach the president, and that India's message isn't reaching Trump. You agree with that? And if so, why?
See, two things. One, a lot of people have spoken about do a leader level call and sort it out one-to-one. Now, you can do a leader level call and say, I want tariffs of 11%, you want of 13%, we talk it out and settle at 12%. But that's if you're negotiating on just one point. Okay? I want to buy a car for you for 1,000 rupees, you want 1,200 rupees, we agree to 1,100. That's a one-to-one discussion. But when you're negotiating something as complex as a trade deal, which ranges from agriculture to industrial commodities to energy, you need to get trade delegations into the room to have very technical discussions. Those discussions have to be done by officials who specialize in trade policy and negotiation. And it cannot be left to two individuals, even President Trump and Prime Minister Modi. And the certain countries have had leader level talks with the US to settle the tariffs issue, and they found themselves getting unilateral messaging from the US side, sometime in contravention of what has been agreed by the negotiating delegations. We've had that case with Vietnam, with Indonesia. Obviously, there is reluctance in other countries, including in India, to see a repeat of that process.
Yeah.
So
in
what
the
I'm
Indian
system, for better or worse, a leader level call happens at the end of a process. It is not part of a process.
So this is important. You're saying that at this juncture, a Modi-Trump call isn't going to cut it. What we are possibly dealing with is far too complex. It needs experts, negotiators to do the job. However,
Yes,
Nikki Haley, because what Trump is doing is also exposing differences within the Republican Party to some extent. Nikki Haley has an op-ed. One, she's concerned about China, and I'm going to come to China in just a moment. But two, she has urged for Modi and Trump to directly talk, right? You're saying that isn't going to do anything right now. And also, why would India expose our prime minister to this till actually there was some sort of, I would imagine, possibility for an outcome?
No, let me put it this way. Leaders talk all the time. So Prime Minister Modi might well pick up the phone tomorrow and speak to President Trump over anything, peace in Ukraine, whatever, any such issue. But the expectation that the Prime Minister and the President will negotiate the details, the granular details of a trade deal on a phone call is a bit exaggerated and unrealistic. That's all I'm saying. They can talk to each other about the state of the world and the state of the bilateral relationship, about development in the global south, whatever they want to talk about, or the state of the global economy. Those are conversations that can happen at the leader level and
But
should.
Ashok,
But a trade negotiation cannot happen at the leader level.
But let me push back a little bit of this, because you yourself say that India's the offer from India is sitting at the White House and it hasn't been evaluated on merits. This means
my understanding.
This means either, and we're guessing here, either President Trump has seen it and not agreed with it, or he hasn't been shown it, or he's been given some adverse feedback on it. We have no idea. But if it isn't moving, and Modi and Trump talking right now isn't going to solve it, what's going to make it move?
Well, I don't know. The US side has to make that determination. It's because it's sitting in the US. And as I said, the Indian offer is a very generous and good offer. Can it be improved? To be sure, every offer can be improved. I'm sure it can. But we are not getting concrete reasons, from what I understand, for why it's being rejected. And those reasons have to be, granular reasons, that you've offered so many cuts in this area, we want more or we want less or whatever it is. Or we want, greater commitments here or there. So it can't be that I've seen the offer, now have a leader level call, then I'll come up with something and, post it on social media, and that's a done deal. That is what has happened with a couple of countries. There's wariness in terms of wanting to do it.
Let me ask you this. Your FT column talks about the risk to decades of mutual trust. And you're speaking about, how it becomes very difficult for a government to maneuver when there's a hardening of public perception. And I think a lot of that is beginning to happen here because of Trump's unseemly conduct or language used for India. My question to you is this. The short-term realignments are a bit, if they can be called that, I'm just using the word loosely, are a bit confusing. So, for example, you have FM Jaishankar in Moscow, right? And he has spoken about also the lessons learned from over-dependence on only a few partners. You have the Chinese foreign minister who's been in Delhi. He's met with NSA Doval. He's met with the prime minister. He's obviously met with Jaishankar. You've had Vladimir Putin dial Modi. This is the same China that just supported Pakistan actively beyond providing weaponry with live inputs, according to our army on record, in Operation Sindoor. What do we make of this? Is this India learning a cold-blooded transactionalism to deal with a administration in the US that is similar? What do you make of what's happening here?
See, Barkha, let's be honest with ourselves. No relationship is a single issue relationship. When it comes to hardening of public opinion in India, it is not that India is turning anti-America. This is not the India of 1969 or 71 or 72. India has moved on. India recognizes the value of America as, quite honestly, an irreplaceable partner. Not just economic partner, but strategic partner. And the frustration and concerns are that many years of hard work in both capitals are being damaged or put at risk by some thoughtless remarks. So there is frustration with the Trump administration and some of its members. That is not anger with all of America. In fact, the system here in Delhi, and we keep telling our clients that at the Asia Group, the system here in Delhi is keen to continue to work with American companies, American technology partners, because the Indo-US technology bridge, for instance, or business bridge or supply chains bridge is very important. It's important for both countries. It's certainly important for India. So nobody wants to convert a frustration with some individuals to a blowing up of the entire relationship. Nobody does. Coming to China, President Putin is speaking to a lot of people. He's been speaking to our Prime Minister as well, and he's called again after Alaska. The Indian public officials' visit, Minister Jaishankar's visit to Moscow, and before that, NSA Doval's visit to Moscow, were planned in advance, as was Foreign Minister Wang Yi's visit to India. Now, obviously, all of this has taken another context, given what has happened between India and the US. I'm not denying that. People will overread it, and that's understandable. Okay, but some of this was happening anyway. In October last year, 2024, India and China settled the last of the friction points on the border, where troops were virtually eyeball to eyeball. So things at the border are slightly better, though far from normal. This is not 2020. It's far from normal. And given that for India's own manufacturing ambitions and aspirations, some sort of cooperation with China is necessary. And again, many other countries are facing the same predicament. You need to import components from China, intermediates from China, engineering and tunneling equipment from China. You need that. So some sort of not normalization, but softening of economic engagement was expected anyway. However, guardrails remain in sensitive areas, in sensitive technology areas, in critical sectors of the economy, such as telecom or robotics or quantum computing, or even in the entirety of the electric vehicle value chain, because electric vehicles are data ingesters. In all of that, concerns remain and guardrails remain. But some cooperation with China is needed and absolutely required, because it is a very large economy and a large manufacturing economy.
I want to ask you in the end, your column was one of the few I've seen on the tariff war that does not correlate what's happening to Operation Sindoor. The conventional wisdom is that things have nosedived because of Trump's annoyance that America's role, as he sees it or he claims it, was not acknowledged in Operation Sindoor. And everything has gone downhill from there. Another theory is that when Prime Minister Modi visited the US and the campaign in America was still on, he did not meet with Trump because he wanted to be seen to be even-handed and meet either both candidates or not meet either. You avoid that personal dimension in your analysis. Is it because you think it's irrelevant? Is it because you think this is really about trade?
I think the substance is more important than personality. I've always felt that way. And let me put it this way. Maybe President Trump feels that he could have got more of an acknowledgement, though he's talked up his role more than required. Maybe there's all of that is true. But do remember, great leaders and prime ministers and presidents overcome these personal anxieties. Prime Minister Modi came to office in 2014. He came at the back of American visa denial, all of that. You lived through all of that.
Yeah.
All of us did.
Yeah.
Now, he could have said, I will not talk to America, I will talk to every other country, and I will make America wait. What did he do? He said, my country needs me to work with America because it's an important country. I will go to America. And he went there in September 2014 and began a great investment and put in all his political commitment to building that relationship, because he felt it was important for his country and for the world. So that is how, frankly, mature and responsible leaders act.
A final question to you. There is one school of thought that says you can't actually deal with Trump through the formalism of Indian diplomacy structures. That's how our diplomats are trained, excellent as they are. Trump is a different creature, and he thinks his policy out loud on social media, and you need a different route, a different style to get through him. America is driven by lobbying firms. There is talk that India's lobbyists haven't done what they needed to do, that Pakistan has hired lobbyists, including one who was Trump's former bodyguard. I don't know what the merits of these arguments is, but do you need a different playbook to deal with Trump?
Look, three things here. One, hats off to Pakistan. They've obviously, whatever they've done, through whoever they've done, they've had some achievements. And one must give them credit, while, of course, we will have to look after our own interests as well and take them up. But give them credit, they've certainly achieved something. Second, formalism and the playbook. There certainly should be a reckoning within the MEA, within the Indian system on lessons learned, what we did right, what we did wrong, what we could do better. Of course, that goes without saying. But fundamentally, we can't change who we are, can we? I mean, I have read newspaper columns saying, send somebody who's a golfer. Send somebody, play golf with him. You think a golf game would have settled all this? Really, seriously. I mean, we've had former diplomats saying this, which is ridiculous. We've had people saying, do deals with Trump. Now tell me which Indian public official, civil servant, diplomat, or minister will make announcements about investments in China, investments in the US, FDI into the US, without the resources to back them. There will be inquiries here. There will be accountability in Parliament. The same people who are writing columns saying do all this will be writing columns saying why are you making such promises which India can't keep or maintain. So for better or worse, we have an accountable system here. It sometimes holds us back. I'm not denying that, but it also prevents us making reckless remarks or reckless statements or reckless promises, which certain other countries have the political system and ability to do, or that allows them that.
So you don't believe that all is lost yet, but you do believe that there is danger that all could be lost.
There is certainly a risk. There's a risk that, this relationship for the past 25 odd years has been on an upward swing. It's gone through some challenges here and there, but essentially governments across party lines in both countries, Prime Minister Modi here, President Trump in his first term, President Biden, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, they've all worked to strengthen this relationship. And certainly over the past 10 years, it's been strengthened, building on the legacy that Prime Minister Modi inherited. One would have hoped that would continue. There is now risk that we could plateau for some time. However, the business, technology, scientific research, relationship between the two countries, I'm not even going into people to people, is simply so strong that frankly even governments can't stop it.
Well, that's a rare note of optimism in the current environment. So thank you, Ashok, very much. Ashok Malik, partner at the Asia Group, former advisor to the MEA, has a column out in the Financial Times. If you haven't read it, I urge you to read it. He tries to analyze and answer the million-dollar question, why is Trump really singling out India? Thank you, Ashok. See you soon.
Thank you, Barkha.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.